Well, right now we have Danielle Nadeau with us today, and I'm going to give the long title here, all right? You are the program director of the Mary and Dick Allen Diabetes Center, and the full name is the Dr. Chris V. Iyer Endowed Chair in Diabetes Care. And
it's a long title,
it keeps going. Good to see you.
Hey, nice to see you. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. What we're going to talk about today, sure, diabetes a bit, but more about Alzheimer's disease, antioxidant foods, the benefit of a good, colorful diet. In fact, you wrote a book about that, right?
Yeah, I wrote a book called The Color Code, which is all about the health benefits of brightly colored fruits and vegetables.
Right.
The co-author was Jim Joseph. He was chief of the neuroscience lab at Tufts. And he was commuting into work with a guy named Ron Pryor, who was looking at antioxidant potential of foods. And Jim said, you know, he's from West Virginia. He said, I'm going to feed my the blueberries just to my rats and see if they do better. And sure enough, when he fed older rats blueberries, they actually had improvement in memory and motor skills. It was the first time anything like that had been shown. That was back in around 2000. Wow. And since that time, actually, we now have studies in humans that show similar things. So there's a lot that you can do to protect your brain by eating healthy foods like blueberries.
Yeah, and I've heard this over the years. Sometimes they're called superfoods. Some people don't like that term, but it does apply. I've certainly heard blueberries and cranberries and berries in general, sweet potatoes, all kinds of different things.
Absolutely. I think to try and fill your diet with so many healthy foods, there's hardly room for bad foods is one way to approach things. I think, for example, to have, a blueberry smoothie for breakfast, a big salad with chickpeas for lunch, a healthy protein with greens for dinner is a good way to go. And then if you're hungry during the day, have some nuts, which also are a good brain food as well.
Yeah, exactly. Now, tell us about antioxidant foods. And the reason I'd like you to kind of go into this a bit, we hear that term a lot. We hear it in television commercials all the time. You know, rich in antioxidants, and you know, who knows?
Yeah.
You hear it from the foods you just talked about. You hear it sometimes for coffee and wine and all kinds of things, right?
Absolutely. Well, Ken, I've heard you're a gardener, and I think that gardening is a good place to start because plants really give us those antioxidants. The way I think about it is that you have plants living out there in the bright sunshine. It's kind of a sea of ultraviolet irradiation that would kill us all. They need to have colors, pigments to protect themselves from the sun. Now, when we consume those plants, we actually have given to us those antioxidant pigments that protect the plant in nature and that protect our brains, protect our hearts, protect our kidneys, protect our blood vessels when we consume them. So it's really from the plant world that we derive these foods, these pigments, these anthocyanins, these lycopenes, these luteins that protect everything from our brain to our eyes to our heart. And so to try and include more, brightly colored fruits and vegetables is a great thing. Yeah,
you mentioned lycopenes. Tomatoes, of course, come to mind with that. And I've actually heard that over the years they've done some studies on certain foods, like tomatoes, where it's actually a benefit to cook them to a certain point, not overcook anything, but it brings those nutrients out a little more than just eating them raw, where other fruits, obviously fruits, are going to be better raw. But.
Well, lycopene is somewhat unique in that it's heat stable. And when you take tomatoes, you cook them up in a sauce, add a bit of olive oil, it makes it more available to the body. And you're right. I mean, there was a study in older nuns that found that those nuns who had the highest levels of lycopenes were much more likely to be able to fend for themselves than the nuns who had lower levels of lycopene. So to try to include, again, more plants, tomato sauce is a great example. For most pigments, though, I would say like blueberries, for example, when you heat them up too much, you often destroy the antioxidant benefit. So let me just give you in a minute or two what an ideal diet might be to protect the brain. I would say if you can have a blueberry smoothie for breakfast, if you can have a salad maybe with chickpeas for lunch, and then for dinner, think about either having fish like a wild salmon or like a bean soup, like lentil soup, and then again maybe some frozen raspberries for dessert. That to me would be like an ideal diet for protecting the brain, trying to avoid sugar, white flour, too much saturated fat. That way you can really, I think take yourself a long way towards having an ideal diet that's really good for your heart and good for your brain.
Yeah, exactly. And there's so much stuff out there that you can that works. Of course, another one that comes to mind is soybeans edamame that are just wonderful.
Taste great.
They taste great. They can be transformed into a hummus or almost a soybean guacamole.
Exactly.
Or whatever
Yeah,
you want.
you must be a bit of a chef, actually, Ken.
A little bit, but I mean even avocados and things like that.
Avocados are great for you. Avocados have a healthy fat in them, and they also have beta-sitosterol, which competes with cholesterol for absorption, so it can help lower your cholesterol as well. So avocados are really considered one of those superfoods that you talk about as well.
Yeah, exactly. Now let's talk about another thing that comes up, and I find this interesting. People talk about chocolate, mainly dark chocolate.
Dark chocolate, right. Yeah, you want to avoid chocolate that's too processed. You really want, that if you get raw chocolate, one thing I sometimes do is make a smoothie and I throw some actual cocoa beans, that's what you make chocolate from, in your smoothie. That's, it's absolutely not processed at all. But actually, so the less processed, the better. If it's actually been, if it's called Dutch chocolate, it really doesn't have a lot of benefit. So less processed chocolate is the best, but generally dark chocolate is the way to go. There's a fascinating study that looked at Nobel Prize winners and the amount of chocolate consumed by country. And those countries that have the highest intake of chocolate have the highest number of Nobel laureates associated with them.
There you go. That sounds good. And white chocolate, folks, it's not chocolate. So
that's right. White chocolate is not chocolate.
Yes, and I'm not a fan of it. It's just sugar and fat and too sweet for me. But something else that we really need to look into are spices. And it is a turmeric right now people are really looking into. But the benefits of spices, really, other cultures have known this around the world.
I'm so glad
for
you brought
years
that
they were
up.
used to kind of mask stuff that maybe went off a little bit.
That's right.
Go way back.
That's right, yeah.
But along the way, just some wonderful benefits.
Absolutely. It's interesting. In India, less than 1% of the population has Alzheimer's disease, and they actually attribute that to high levels of turmeric intake.
Yeah.
So to try to include, I think, these healthy traditional ethnic foods, such as Indian food, where they incorporate a lot of spices, is a fabulous thing. So to make a chana masala a couple times a week, or to go ahead into Mother's and have a turmeric shot once in a while.
Right.
Very, very good for your brain and for your heart. Powerful antioxidants. Just really take you a long way down that road toward health.
Yeah, and I use spices a lot. And just a quick tip: when you're cooking with spices like turmeric and so on, put them in the pan first, a little bit of oil, let them bloom, the flavor comes out, and then go for it. Some people just put them in the end, they just kind of lay there.
Right.
The benefits are going to be the same, the health benefits, but the taste really blooms out. Green tea, we've heard a lot about this, and in teas in general, right?
Absolutely. I was sitting in Jim Joseph's office in Boston. He's the co-author of the book that I wrote, and he had a gentleman come in from upstairs, sit in his office, and what he had were a plate with 250 samples of DNA. And basically, you want certain genes turned on and certain genes turned off. And when he put a layer of green tea on those genes, all the genes that you wanted turned on were turned on, and all the genes that you wanted turned off were turned off. There's really hardly any other food out there that is so good for you. I think I have coffee in the morning, but I have tea in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Green tea, there's so many different varieties. You can make a chai green tea if you want, or you can just have a cup of green tea. But to have a cup of green tea every day, it's gene therapy that costs you about 20 cents a pop.
And it's easy.
It's so easy.
Hot or cold.
Right,
You can walk to Starbucks and have their green tea, and
Absolutely.
it's nice and light too. It's very
nice
refreshing.
and light.
Yeah.
To have green tea as part of your routine every day is a fabulous thing.
Yeah,
for
definitely.
gene therapy.
Yep, there you go. And now, what about citrus fruits in general?
Well, absolutely. You know, citrus fruits are associated with a lower risk of heart disease, also less brain disease. They have a great source of vitamin C, as you know. So I think for the average person to have a couple citrus fruits every day is a good thing. For people with diabetes, it's better to not probably have like a big glass of orange juice. There's too much sugar in there.
Yeah,
but I think to have the whole fruit is a great thing. And what we try to get people to do is to push their consumption of fruits and vegetables to at least 10 servings per day. And we actually, in the book, kind of show you how to do that. So to have a smoothie in the morning, maybe snack on an orange, later in the afternoon, to just try to consume plenty of fruits and vegetables every day. Another is pomegranate.
I love pomegranate.
There are studies in Israel where people drinking 8 ounces of pomegranate juice every day actually had reversal of atherosclerosis in their carotid arteries. And even strawberries, for example, similar effects in terms of reducing risk of heart disease from having just 10 strawberries per day. So to try to include lots of brightly colored fruits and vegetables in your diet every day, so good for your brain, so good for your heart, and helpful, I think, for people with diabetes. People with diabetes kind of have a fire burning inside. They have a lot of inflammation, a lot of activity, a lot of oxidative radicals being formed. And when you include in your diet these brightly colored fruits and vegetables, it tends to quiet that storm, tends to reduce that inflammatory action that's occurring because of all this sugar that's being metabolized. So again, to have like the blueberries, to have strawberries, have lots of greens in your diet like lutein. You know, a lot of your people who may be watching this show may be worried about developing macular degeneration.
Right.
It's the most common cause of blindness in people who are 65 and older. And it turns out that if you have a lot of lutein in your diet, from greens, from kale, from spinach, from corn, you can actually dramatically reduce your risk of having macular degeneration. So that's another important thing for people who are interested in protecting their vision, which is so important.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we're out of time. Hope we have you back again, because we could talk for a while here. Anything about food I like. Doctor, thank you very much.
Ken, thanks for having me. Great seeing you today.
Great to meet you. We'll see you back again. The website is hoag.org/diabetes. We'll talk more about diabetes another time. This kind of ties in, obviously. Great to see you.
My pleasure, Ken. Thanks for having me again.
We'll have you back,
Okay.
and we'll be right back. We'll get you unhooked in just a minute.